tearing me apart!
Hey, that's enough static out of you.
But you're not listening to me! You're involved in this just like I am.
Hi, Jimmy. Hiya, Gig. We asked Jimmy over today because he's a racing man himself. A real one, not a crazy one. Incidentally, I think I should explain that Jimmy just stepped over from the set of Giant. And need I add, he plays a Texan. Speaking of racing, have you ever been in a drag race?
Are you kidding me?
Do you have any special advice for the young people who drive?
Take it easy driving. The life you might save might be mine. You know?
I went on to Las Vegas, I think the next day, to open my show. And it was a few days later that one of the girls in the chorus came to my dressing room and she said, Jamie's dead. I already knew it. He was gone the Sunday before when I had hugged him. And he wasn't there.
There were some phenomenal actors from the 1950s. James Dean was one of them. He was good looking. He had a sexy bad boy image. He was the symbol of cool and sexy on screen. You could tell. There was something just cool and mysterious about him to me the first time I saw him on screen. He had that star quality. James Byron Dean was born February 8th, 1931 at the Seven Gables apartment on the corner of 4th Street and McClure Street in Marion, Indiana. He was the only child of Mildred Marie Wilson and Winton Dean. Allegedly, 6 years after his father had left farming to become a dental technician, James Dean moved with his family to Santa Monica, California. He went to Brenton Public School in the Brenton neighborhood of Los Angeles, then transferred soon afterwards to McKinley Elementary School. The family spent a number of years there, and it is said that James Dean was very close to his mother. His mother, Mildred, introduced him to the arts. She would read him poems, taught him to tap dance and play the violin. I read that Michael DeAngelis said that she was the only person capable of understanding him. In 1938, his mother became suddenly sick with acute stomach pain, and quickly after that, she began to lose weight. She died of uterine cancer in 1940 at 29 years old. James Dean was only 9 years old when she died. Without his mother to care for him, his father sent him to live with his aunt and uncle Hortense and Marcus Winslow on their farm in Fairmont, Indiana, where he was raised in their household. James Dean, a.k.a. Jimmy, was sent back to Indiana with his grandmother on the same train that carried his mother's body. Every time they stopped, Jimmy got off and ran to the baggage car to make sure his mother's casket was still there. Her death left him very sad. Later he would say, "My mother died on me when I was 9 years old. What does she expect me to do? Do it all alone?" His aunt and uncle did what they could to help him deal with his loss. James's father served in World War II, and he later got remarried. James Dean enjoyed living on the farm. His aunt Hortense and Uncle Marcus showed him love and raised him as if he was their own son. His aunt Hortense encouraged Jimmy to perform at the church by giving readings of the evils of alcohol. At school, Jimmy would ask his drama teacher, Adeline, to help him with his readings. In September of 1943, Jimmy began high school in Fairmont High. While he was in high school, his interest in acting, art, and sports took shape. Jimmy was very active in sports, participating in the track, baseball, and basketball teams. He also starred in numerous school productions, including Mooncalf Medford and The Monkey's Paw. He was also a smart young man, very intelligent. In June of 1949, James Dean went back to California to attend college and live with his father. He began his freshman year of college in Santa Monica City College. He soon withdrew from Santa Monica College and enrolled at UCLA in September of 1950. In UCLA, Dean majored in pre-law and minored in theater acting. Allegedly, he never really had much interest in law. He knew his future was in acting. It is said that his father was not too happy with his decision. He took the pre-law course just to please his father. After a few months at UCLA, Jimmy won a role in the school's production at Macbeth. Soon an agent by the name of Isabella Drasmere signed Jimmy Dean, and he had his first professional acting job in December of 1950 in a Pepsi commercial, where he was paid $30. Jimmy Dean left college in January of 1951 to join an actor's workshop organized by James Whitmore. Throughout the course of 1951, he had parts in a handful of television shows and movies, including the television show Hill No. 1, which he starred as John the Apostle, and the film Has Anybody Seen My Gal with Rock Hudson. Jimmy later took the advice of James Whitmore. He recommended that Jimmy moved from Hollywood to New York to become familiarized with the stage. Jimmy soon moved to New York, and in October 1952, his luck started to change. He landed his first Broadway role in See the Jaguar. The production was about a 16-year-old boy, played by Jimmy Dean, who has been locked in an ice house by his crazy mother. Though James Dean received praise from critics, audiences didn't feel the same. The show closed after 5 performances. Jimmy moved on quickly. In November, he auditioned for the prestigious Actors Studio with Christine White. The two of them acted out the scene they had written themselves, called Ripping Off Layers to Find the Roots. He and White were the only two who were accepted in the Actors Studio out of hundreds of others that auditioned. The Actors Studio is known for having trained gifted actors and actresses such as Marlon Brando, Jane Fonda, Robert De Niro, and Al Pacino. In 1954, Jimmy got his big break. He received his second Broadway role in The Immoralist, where he played Bashir, a blackmailing Arab houseboy. The Immoralist was popular with both critics and audiences, particularly with James Dean's performance, but after a few more performances, James gave his resignation. Those working on The Immoralist wondered why he did such a thing. What they did know was that Elia Kazan had taken Jimmy Dean for a film entitled East of Eden. On February 23, 1954, Jimmy Dean gave his final performance in The Immoralist. Soon he was off to Hollywood with Kazan, where he signed a contract with Warner Brothers Studio. He used his $700 advance to buy his first sports car. Filming for East of Eden began on May 27, 1954. Kazan, who directed the film, said he chose James Dean to play the role of Cal Trask because he was Cal. Jimmy had sort of a grudge against all fathers due to his own father's isolation from him, allegedly. East of Eden was based on the novel by John Steinbeck. It was the story of Cal Trask, a son longing for attention from his uptight father, who seems to only care about his older son, Aaron. The film was getting real good reviews worldwide before it was released. Thanks to James Dean, realistic, memorable performance as the young and confused Cal, he did not attend the premiere of the film, which featured Marilyn Monroe handing out programs, because he was too uncomfortable about the mass media that he knew he would receive. While shooting the film, East of Eden, James Dean met a woman who was the alleged love of his life, actress Pier Angeli. Allegedly, Angeli's mother did not approve of James's casual dress and what, for her at least, unacceptable behavior traits. His t-shirt attire, late dates, fast cars, drinking, and the fact that he was not Catholic. Allegedly, her mother said that such behavior was not acceptable in Italy. In addition, Warner Brothers, where he worked, tried to talk him out of getting married, and he himself told Angeli that he did not want to get married. Richard DeVolos, James Dean East of Eden co-star, claims that Jimmy Dean in fact wanted to marry Angeli and was willing to allow their children to be brought up Catholic, allegedly. Allegedly, some people thought that their relationship was just a publicity stunt. In his autobiography, Elia Kazan, the director of East of Eden, dismissed the notion that James Dean could possibly have had any success with women, although he remembered hearing Dean and Angeli loudly making love in Dean's dressing room, allegedly. I did read that in his adolescence, James Dean had a friendship with a United Methodist Church minister, Reverend James DeWord. And in 2011, it was reported that James Dean once confided in Elizabeth Taylor, telling her that he was sexually abused by a minister approximately 2 years after his mother's death, allegedly. It is said that screenwriter William Bass was one of Dean's closest friends. According to Bass, he was Dean's roommate at UCLA and later in New York, and he knew Dean throughout the last 5 years of his life. I read that Bass was also Dean's first biographer, and he would not confirm whether he and James Dean had a sexual relationship until 2006 in his book Surviving James Dean. He was more open about the nature of his relationship with Dean, writing that they had been lovers one night while staying at a hotel in Barugo Springs, allegedly. In the book, he described the difficult circumstances of their involvement. On January 4th, 1955, Warner Brothers execs announced that James Dean would play Jim Stark in his most noticeable film, Rebel Without a Cause, which would be directed by Nicholas Ray. Filming began on March 28, 1955, and during the following month, Warner Brothers renewed his contract. He also signed on to play what would be his final role as Jet Rink in the film Giant. Rebel Without a Cause was about 3 teenagers who must deal with their challenges of youth alienation from their misunderstanding parents. Jim Stark is a kid who gets himself into trouble, which causes his parents to move from town to town in fear of ruining their image. He must also deal with a father he can't model himself after because of his vulnerability to his demanding wife. Then there was Judy, who was played by Natalie Wood, whose performance earned her an Academy Award nomination. After Jimmy Dean wrapped up Rebel Without a Cause, he went on to shoot Giant with Elizabeth Taylor and Rock Hudson and director George Stevens. This film was different for Jimmy Dean. The story of Giants spans through 2 generations, which means we see Jimmy Dean mature from a young rebellious cowboy to a much older and richer oil tycoon. Jet Rink was his final performance. It was a sad day for many. On Friday, September 30th, 1955, with the shooting over, he was anxious to race again. Jimmy Dean went to Competition Motors to pick up his car, which he named the Little Bastard. He was on his way to a racing competition along with his mechanic, Rolf Witherich, in Salinas, California. At about 3:30 p.m. near Bakersfield, James Dean received a ticket for speeding. He also just shot a safe driving public service announcement a couple of months before. At around 5:45 p.m., just outside of Paso Robles, Dean's Porsche Spider collided head-on with a 1950 Ford sedan that was coming from the opposite direction. Suddenly and without warning, the Ford was driven by Donald Turnspeed, came directly in front of Jimmy Dean's car. Jimmy Dean swerves to get around the Ford at the intersection of Route 466 and 41. Witherich was thrown out of the car, his jaw was broken, and his leg was crushed, but he survived. Jimmy Dean got a direct hit. He was trapped in the car with multiple fractures and a broken neck. He dies instantly. So many people took it so hard, including his friend, actress Eartha Kitt. She was devastated. Him and Eartha Kitt were dear friends. She called him Jamie, and she was very protective of him. He was like her brother. She could sense his vulnerability. She even taught him ballet. He wanted to know how to move like her on stage. His death is something she never really got over. It seemed to tear her up inside. It seems like a worldwide frenzy took place. I read that a couple of fans even took their own lives after James Dean died. Other fans sent letters to Giant director George Stevens, threatening to take his life if he were to cut a frame of Dean's performance. Though initially slow to reach newspapers in the eastern United States, details of Dean's death rapidly spread through radio and television. By October 2nd, his death had received significant coverage from the domestic and foreign media outlets. His funeral was held on October 8, 1955, at the Fairmont Friends Church in Fairmont, Indiana. The casket remained closed to conceal his injuries. There was an estimated 600 mourners in attendance, and around another 2,400 fans gathered outside of the building during the procession. He was laid to rest at the Park Cemetery in Fairmont. There is a James Dean monument financed by a Japanese businessman in front of the former Show Lane Post Office, which closed in 1994, and a restaurant until it closed in 2022, 1/2 mile from the accident site. James Dean, aka Jimmy, had a big influence on a lot of people. He is definitely not forgotten. Rest in peace, Jimmy Dean.